regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wilmette. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. As I said, this is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wilmette. We'll call the matters in the order in which they appear on the printed agendas, and there are agendas on the table by the door. And actually, I need an agenda. Can I borrow an agenda? Thank you. So you may want to have one so you can follow along to see when your matter will be called, or if you're planning to lead the meeting, it's always good to have one as well. If you do plan to address us tonight, we ask you please come up to the podium, please speak in the microphone and tell us who you are and where you live, as that may be relevant to the matter at hand. We ask that you speak clearly in the microphone so we can hear you, and because everything you say and everything we say is being recorded. From those recordings, minutes of the meeting are prepared, and these minutes are available both at Village Hall and on our website at wilmette.com. Also, our Village Board meetings are televised on local access channel 6 and on the internet, and if you look up, you can actually see the cameras. The red light indicates the active camera. By televising our meetings, we make it easy for our neighbors in the community to follow the proceedings of the Village Board, to see the types of matters that come before us, the questions that we ask, and the policies we create. You can find archived videos of Village Board and other local government meetings at wilmette.com, and I'd like to personally thank the many residents of Wilmette who regularly tune into Channel 6 and follow the proceedings of their local government. Now, before each meeting, the board receives a packet of agenda materials, and these agenda materials are also posted on wilmette.com on the Friday before our meeting, so that residents and other interested parties can review the very same materials that the board members received. This week's packet contained 238 pages. We've had an opportunity to review all the information in the agenda pack, so if you do plan to address us tonight, we ask you to tell us the most relevant, most material, the most important points you really want us to focus on. Finally, we are a community of neighbors, and as such, we want our meeting to be as civil and courteous as possible. So at this time, as a courtesy to those around you, please take this time to turn your cell phones and other devices off. And while we're turning off our phones, would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Sullivan.
Here.
Trustee Kennedy.
Here.
Trustee Dodd.
Here.
Trustee Kurzman.
Here.
Trustee Barrow.
Here.
Trustee Plunkett.
Here.
President Belinsky.
Here. We're all here, so we obviously have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is item 2, public comment. During public comment, individuals are allotted up to 3 minutes to address the board on an item which is not on the agenda. Members of the audience may address the board on matters which are on tonight's agenda when the particular matter is called. So is there any member of the audience who would like to address the board on a matter which is not on the agenda? May I see a show of hands? Please. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy Hoying. I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Wilmette. I just wanted to tell you today is National Voter Registration Day.
See if we can fix that.
And today we spent time in 5 local high schools, and we were successful in registering several hundred first-time voters, and we wanted to let you know that. We were very pleased with the high school's response and working with us to inform all future first-time voters what they needed to do to register to vote today. So thank you to the Park District, because we were also at the Wilmette Rec Center, and to all the local high schools with a very successful day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Would anybody else like to be heard at this point in time? Okay, moving on. Item 3 is the consent agenda. As described on the printed agenda, items which are routine business that are not normally debated by the Village Board are placed on the consent agenda. All items that begin with the number 3 are on the consent agenda, so tonight that means starting on page 1 with item 3.1, all the items on page 2, and almost all the items on page 3 ending with item 3.21. Items on the consent agenda are up for approval tonight, and if an item is not removed by a member of the audience and it's not removed by one of the trustees, the item will be approved and it will not be discussed. So I'll begin by asking, is there any member of the audience who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? May I see a show of hands? Okay, moving on. Are there any items that any of the trustees would like to remove from the consent agenda?
Could I remove item 3.21? But just for clarification, not in
Okay,
real
so
discussion.
item 3.21, appointment of Judiciary Committee as a special zoning committee to review technical amendments to the village's zoning code in regards to cannabis business establishments. That has been removed from the consent agenda. Any other items? Okay. I'll also note that there were corrected minutes that were posted online, and they were also sent to the board members. May I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Clerk, please call the roll on the motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
Trustee Dodd.
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman.
Aye.
Trustee Barrow.
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett.
Aye.
President Polinsky.
Aye, so the motion carries. The consent agenda has been adopted. If you were here for an item on the consent agenda, it's been approved, and I'll clarify for people who are here tonight. Again, all of the items beginning with the number 3 have been approved, and that includes Land Use Committee items 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, and 3.9. So if you're here for one of those items, it was just approved. There'll be no further discussion of those items or any of the other items on the consent agenda, so you are free to leave. Of course, you are more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Now, if you are leaving, hang on, we have something new. I don't know, Nancy and Kate leave.
Nancy and Kate missed it.
Okay, so it is early, plenty of time to stop by one of our restaurants, and we have actually an incentive now on the table there. There's a coupon that is accepted by certain of our downtown restaurants, so a little incentive to try and get people to go to the restaurants after our village board meetings. So we'll move on to item 4, which is report of officers, and the first item is recognition of Patrick Duffy for his years of service on the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I'd ask Mr. Duffy to please join us at the podium. You're going to be recognized. You have to get on camera, you know. Although that's something that you've done regularly for the past several years. So Patrick served on the Zoning Board of Appeals from July of 2009 through July of 2019. He was chair of the ZBA from February of 2015 to July of 2019. So here are some stats that the staff has compiled. During your time on the zoning board, there were approximately 550 cases, and they say 266. I don't know if that's exact, but it's given as an exact number. 266 cases while you were chair. You know, the ZBA, most people don't realize how much work the ZBA is. It's frankly just barely short of being a trustee. Because you have 2 meetings a month, you've got prep, and then you also have controversy. And so people that I know that watch Channel 6 a lot, they say the zoning board is the best because there's always a little bit of drama. The village board can be very boring and very dry, but zoning board is always pleases. So the other thing, in terms of statistic-wise, although Trustee Sullivan corrected me on this, the staff has told me that there are only 5 members since 2009 that have actually served their full 10 years. Trustee Sullivan managed to get more than 10 years in, but he stepped down to join the village board. Chris Canning stepped down to join the village board. Both were chairs. But there's only 5 individuals, and there hasn't been one since 2013 that has served the full 10 years. So we commend you for that. We thank you for that. I'm not going to list all 266 cases that you covered as chairman.
Don't ask me for my favorite either.
But there were a few that are worth mentioning. You know, the restoration of the Women's Club, the townhomes on Wilmette Ave, the parking lot and the pool at Loyola, the St. Francis School Addition, our place, the adult daycare, and then the new townhomes on 514 Poplar. Those were all sort of more significant recent cases, and so we thank you for that. I'll give you the floor if you'd like to make a few comments, and then we have a little memento for you as well.
The only thing I'd like to say is it's easier on that side than on this side. Let's see, what else can I add? I do believe, though, that I learned a lot on the zoning board, whether as chair or not, but, you know, not only about zoning code in the village, but also about how the government works, or our local government works, then also what it takes as a volunteer to help the machine roll. And if anybody of the 6 people that usually watch the zoning board are watching right now, I encourage you to, you know, fill out the application online and volunteer, because it's really worth your time. So, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Any comments from any of the board members? Any questions for our outgoing zoning board chair? Trustee Sullivan, you were...
Well, I would just, I mean, I had the opportunity to serve on the ZBA with Patrick, and and, you know, he was always prepared, and even when I was trustee, I know when we'd look at cases, I'd always go right to his notes because he was always prepared, and so I really appreciate it. He took it seriously, and really appreciate it, and thought was a great chairman to step in. And I would also acknowledge, because I know he's not here, but Mike Boyer, too. But, you guys did a great job. And you were an asset to the community.
Yeah, Mike also served a full 10 years. He
Yep.
is not here tonight to receive his very special memento from the
Sorry, I
village.
didn't want to take your spot.
Thank you. Yes, Trustee
I just want
Dowd.
to say thank you again, too, Chris. I mean, I really appreciated, as a trustee sitting up here, we always would be reading, obviously, the various comments of the zoning board members, and I just really respected and appreciated your perspective. I felt like it was always very fair and honest, and you just did a great job listening to the residents and trying to balance. Obviously, I think being on the zoning board is very tricky in terms of balancing individual needs and what people are trying to do with their homes and our zoning code, and I just thought you did a tremendous job leading that effort, and I actually just want to say I learned a lot reading your comments as a relatively new trustee, so thank you.
Thank you. More praise than I deserve.
All right. So, Patrick, I will present you this certificate of appreciation.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know you play a huge role in this village. You more than any of us.
Well, certainly more than me, that's for sure.
I'm just going to make my rounds here.
might get
Thank you
around.
very much.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for your service. Thank you guys. Thank you as well.
Okay, we'll move on to item 4.2, which is recognition of Chris Dunn for his years of service on the Environmental and Energy Commission. Chris, please come on up. I'll try to not embarrass you the same as I did Patrick there. So Chris served as chair of the Environmental and Energy Commission from its creation in July of 2008 to June of 2019. So he's the only chair until he stepped down, and former village trustee Julie Wolf has stepped into his role, which is really great.
Absolutely.
That she has done that. I'm going to highlight just a handful of the accomplishments that occurred while you were chair. First, most recently, the review and then recommendation that we adopt the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus's Greenest Region Compact 2, and that's also led to the beginning of some efforts by the EEC in terms of drafting a sustainability plan. And I know that's a tremendous undertaking that you got going, and Julie will continue with the commissioners. The coal tar ban, there was a suggestion that maybe we ban coal tar, and utilizing the EEC for advice, we referred that to the EEC. And the EEC did tremendous work on researching that, and the village board ended up passing that ban. During the zoning code rewrite, there was suggestions and input from the commission on incorporating new green standards into the code, including solar panels and wind turbines and the like, and the expertise was appreciated there. And then, input and support on things related to a solar purchasing program, to green alleys, to rain gardens, electrical aggregation, leaf blower regulations. There's a whole litany of things that the EEC, the contribution the EEC has made over the years while you've been chair, so we appreciate that. On a personal note, I will tell you that one of the best parts of being on this board, and certainly being village president, is you get to meet new people. Chris was not someone I knew before I ran for office, before I was elected, and I got to know him through this process, and I'm grateful for that. You're one of the people that I really enjoyed meeting and getting to know well through my service. So thank you for that, and thank you for your service. And I will give the floor to you, and if you'd like to make some remarks.
Yes, well, thank you, President Blinsky. I feel the same way, and thank you for allowing me to continue to serve after President Canning appointed me, and I'm grateful, first of all, for the outstanding, indispensable staff who worked with us through those 4 years, Kate McManus and Kate Amoruso now, Erica Block and Rachel Randolph in past years, and above all, as you all know, our awesome community development director, John Adler, who had to tolerate me for 11 years and was whose wise counsel and his commitment was a huge benefit to all of us. And we also had and have some outstanding partners among other Wilmette residents. Go Green Wilmette and Beth Drucker, first of all. They're always providing us input whenever we needed it. And most recently, Nancy Hoying in the League is doing outstanding work on helping with the sustainability plan in addition to everything else that they do. And as you all also know, as President Belinsky was just saying, one of the wonderful things about being involved in village government is all the people you meet. And we had some incredible people serving on the commission for all of those years. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to go on for 2 more minutes, only because I want to just comment briefly on Wilmette Village Government and what a wonderful place it is to work in, the sort of the heritage that we all have. And I'll start by telling a story. Shortly after we were married, I had the good luck to work on a consulting project with Stan Kennedy. And Stan ended up being my original Wilmette mentor, and I bet he's mentored a number of you among hundreds of other people who've had that privilege. And when Beth and I, Beth and Katie Dunn, when Beth and I moved to Wilmette, Stan hosted a dinner for us with then President Nancy Canning, and Stan knew about the partisan background that Beth and I have. We met while working on Senator Paul Simon's staff in Washington, and we went back, and we were both lucky to work in federal agencies in the White House. And he said, okay, I want you to understand, Wilmette is Camelot, and I'm going to tell you why. And then he went on to explain the nonpartisan political culture here, and that, and I kind of look, I'm sorry, really? And that in Wilmette politics, partisan hats don't matter. Everyone is here to listen and be civil. And now that's easier at the local government level, certainly. And so before long, it turns out, Beth and I were working to help elect Chris Canning, who does not share our partisan leanings, and Beth was his campaign manager. So we were very convinced about how important it was to maintain the special political culture that we have here. And as you may have, if you haven't seen the article that the Onion did, apparently they agreed with Stan. I'll just read a little excerpt from it. The premise is that the producer of The Wire and Stream is going to do an expose on Wilmette called The Township. And according to Simon, the sprawling new series will offer a searing and unsentimental glimpse into the happy social fabric of modern-day Wilmette, an area known for its deeply untroubled history and well-functioning political structure. So, and, you know, we've had our moments too here, as you all know, but it, having worked on so many campaigns and come from that background, particularly these days, it gives me hope, and we, I think, can serve, not to say that there are other municipalities that operate in the same way, but we are extraordinary, both for the outstanding staff we have here, for all of you. Thank you to all of you for everything that you do and for your service. And I would just like to impose on your good nature for another minute or two to read you a quote that I found that is the best things that I've ever heard written on how important it is to be involved in public life and to make that sort of commitment to democracy. It's from a new collection written of essays and poems by E.B. White. And in his introduction to this book, John Meacham, and I'm paraphrasing him a little bit, says the following. In the summer of 1943, at the suggestion of his wartime consigliere, Harry Hopkins, Franklin Roosevelt took a moment away from the pressures of global war to read a New Yorker notes and comment essay written by E.B. White on July 3rd, 1943. E.B. White was, among many other things, the author of Charlotte's Web. The essay was occasioned by a request from the Writers' War Board, a group of authors devoted to shaping public opinion about the Allied war effort in World War II. We received a letter from the Writers' War Board the other day asking for a statement on the meaning of democracy, White began. Continuing, he wrote, "Surely the board knows what democracy is. It's the line that forms on the right. It's the don't in don't shove. It's the hole in the stuffed shirt through which the sawdust slowly trickles. It's the dent in the hi-hat. Democracy is the recurring suspicion that more than half the people are right more than half the time. It's the feeling of privacy in the voting booths, the feeling of communion in libraries, the feeling of vitality everywhere. Democracy is a letter to the editor. Democracy is a score at the beginning of the ninth, an idea which hasn't been disproved yet, a song the words of which have not gone bad. It's the mustard on the hot dog and the cream in ration coffee." The president loved it, and he read it to numerous gatherings in the coming weeks and months, and I enthusiastically share what the president, the thought that the president had, and each time he finished these readings, he said, "Them's my sentiments exactly." So here we are in Wilmette, and that comes very close to describing this. Thank you for indulging me with this. Take care.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from any of the board members? Chris, I do have, you can't leave without your
Thank you, Chris.
certificate of appreciation. Thank you so much. Okay, there are more report of officers. Items 314 and 315 have the recommendation of appointment of 2 individuals to the Plan Commission, and what we normally do is have them be introduced when that happens. There was a mistake, and that wasn't put on the agenda, but we're going to go ahead through that since we're not voting or anything like that. So item 4.3 would be introduction of Mariah DeGrino, who is recommended for appointment to the Plan Commission. Would you please approach? Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight. This is your opportunity to just share your background and motivations with the board, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever you'd like. It's hard to follow Mr. Dunn there with his moment on the podium, but please, welcome, and please introduce yourself to the board.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm getting a little over a cold that's been going through our house and apparently some other households, so I usually don't sound this husky. But my name is Mariah DeGrino. I am an 11-year resident of the village of Wilmette. I am a partner at DLA Piper, practicing on our land use planning and zoning team. And I've had the fortune of doing that my entire career and doing it on a full-time basis. And so it's been very exciting and gratifying. And so, like I said, I've been an 11-year resident here. When we moved to Wilmette, I hit the ground running. We immediately found out we were having our first child, so the chaos of that started. And then I was, a few years after that, diagnosed with breast cancer and went through treatment for that. It ended up being a 5-year journey that I'm now at the end of, dealing with the BRCA2 mutation. And so I thought, I've thought over the years I should turn in my talent bank questionnaire, and so I finally, after sitting down with Rich DeLeo, another fellow Wilmetter, or Wilmetian, I did it, and had the pleasure of speaking with President Bielinski, and here I am. So I'm very excited. Like I said, I live and breathe land use planning and zoning, and I'm very excited to participate in the Plan Commission's activities, and happy to answer any questions you have.
It's one. Look, we're lucky. We're so lucky in Wilmette. We have so many people who are willing to generously volunteer their time. Some of them are lay people that don't know much about land use when they start in it. Some of them have backgrounds like yours, which is, you sort of look at that and you're like, great, she wants to be on the Plan Commission. This is perfect, right? And so, thank you very much for volunteering. But any questions or comments from any of the trustees? So the process is, on the next meeting, you were recommended this meeting, and should be appointed at the next board meeting, and then you're officially a member of the Plan Commission.
Okay.
So thank you again for coming
Excellent.
tonight, and thank you for volunteering.
I'm very excited. I spent the day at our global real estate conference, and the topic was change and innovation, disruption, and so it'll be exciting as we go through this Plan Commission process to see how the village wants to embrace disruption and technology. There were some really exciting things discussed at the summit today. So
Yeah, we may not have much choice in that. That's what disruption is all about, right?
Exactly. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Next item is introduction of Justin Shepard, who is recommended for appointment to the Plan Commission. Welcome. You just saw someone introduce themselves, so I don't have to give you the same instructions. If you would, please introduce yourself to the board.
Great. Well, I'm Justin Shepard, and it's wonderful to be nominated at night when I get to hear the warm feelings of Patrick and Chris and their years of service and how well they've done. I've been a Wilmette resident for close to 15 years. I have 2 children at Highcrest right now. I look forward to serving, hopefully, with Mariah on the Planning Commission. She has a lot more direct experience than me, but my career has been in investment management, most recently as the Chief Investment Officer for Aurora Investment Management, an alternative investment firm. And really, my motivation for putting my name forward and thankfully being nominated for this committee is to learn more about the government, how it works, and to do what I can to be a part of it as opposed to just being a bystander. So that's what I have to say this evening.
Great. And that, again, a mixture of backgrounds is what works best on all of these commissions. You don't want, not that it wouldn't be wonderful to have 7 land use lawyers on the zoning board or on the Plan Commission, but that's probably not the best, the construct of it. So a nice mix of backgrounds.
Great.
And, when we talked, your interest sounded just perfect for this.
Right.
So thank you again for volunteering. Any comments or questions from the board?
Thank you very much.
Again.
Very
Thank you
excited.
for coming out tonight. Okay, we will move on to the report from our village manager, Mr. Frenzer.
No report, Mr. President.
Next report is from our Corporation Counsel, Mr. Stein.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Item 5 on the agenda is the report of the Liquor Control Commissioner. There's no report tonight. We will move on to the Standing Committee reports. First up is item 6.1, which is the Land Use Committee. Trustee Barrow.
All items on the consent agenda.
We'll move on to the Finance Committee. Trustee Kennedy.
Most items are the consent agenda. There is 6.21 regarding continued discussion of the program, road program and water and sewer funds.
Right, so this was placed on the agenda in the event that we didn't get through everything last night. While we didn't make decisions on everything last night, we did get through our work last night, so there's nothing really to do here tonight on that item.
Yeah, we'll take that up on October 17th at our first committee of the whole meeting again.
The road discussion,
Yes.
the continued road discussion, okay. Item 6.3 is the Administration Committee. Trustee Dodd.
All items on consent.
Item 6.4 is Municipal Services. Trustee Sullivan.
All items approved on consent.
Public Safety Committee is 6.5. Trustee Kurzman.
All items on consent.
6.6 is Judiciary Committee. Trustee Plunkett.
So agenda item 3.2, was it Trustee Kennedy and 3.21 was removed from the table? Was removed off consent?
321.
321, yes.
321, okay.
Yes.
There.
So do we need a motion on that one?
Yes.
Okay, so Trustee Plunkett, would you move item 3.21?
Yeah, so I move to, is it the Judiciary Committee? Yes. To appoint the Judiciary Committee sitting as a special zoning committee to review certain technical amendments to the village's zoning code in relation to cannabis business establishments and a moratorium upon such uses.
Actually, the motion, that was already passed. That was 3 point.
That was 3.
That was 3.2 all.
So 3.2, no, well, there was a mix. There was a mix of what she said. It's
Okay.
really 3.21, so the moratorium is not part of the appointment. It's just the,
Well, I'm sorry.
This is the appointment of a
Yes.
special zoning committee. It requires a motion and a second, so we'll need a second. on this.
okay, so we need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I will go to Trustee Kennedy, who asked that it be pulled off of consent.
Yes, just for clarification, when I was reading the draft ordinance that Mr. Stein prepared, I thought there were some issues that deserved some further discussion, especially concerning some of the provisions that related to minors, possession of drug paraphernalia, and other restrictions on minors that were removed from the code, but we may want to think a little bit harder before we do that. And so I was hoping that we could add to the Judiciary Committee's agenda at that meeting, not just the zoning issues, but also consideration of that draft ordinance that Mr. Stein prepared.
There's no problem with putting that on the agenda. It was intended to have this entire process or this entire ordinance vetted at the Judiciary Committee. The reason for the appointment of the Judiciary Committee as a special zoning committee was because of the technical amendments we're making to the zoning code.
Right.
So it would be on the agenda. I don't believe it would be a problem. I don't believe the chair would have an issue discussing.
I certainly don't.
Yep. So
Chair of the Judiciary.
we would absolutely make it part of the agenda. It was intended to do so.
Yeah, I was just seeking clarification.
Okay, fair enough. So, point is noted, and by both the Chair of the Judiciary Committee, the Corporation Counsel, and myself, and it seems like that is completely acceptable to all of us, so we'll take that under consideration and proceed in that fashion. So there is a motion and a second, so we actually do need to vote to appoint the zoning committee. So we do a roll call on that?
Voice vote is enough.
A voice vote is enough? Okay. So all those in favor of appointing, of item 3.21, appointment of the Judiciary Committee as a special zoning committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. The Judiciary Committee has been appointed as a special zoning committee. Back to Trustee Plunkett.
All other items on consent.
Okay, there are no reports from our special committees. And item 7 is new business. There's no additional new business to discuss. Item 8 is adjournment. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, the motion carries. We stand adjourned.